There's something here that made them run and arrest her and get her off the streets.
From beauty queen to alleged murderer, this Georgia teenager is now accused of killing an 18-month-old toddler during her freshman year of college.
She's a kid still. 18's young.
There's still many unanswered questions in the case of 18-year-old Trinity Poague, like how did she know the young boy who was killed? But what we do know is that before she posed for this mugshot, she was posing for pageant photos like this one after being crowned Miss Donaldsonville in 2023.
So of course you're going to have little pageants and you're going to have little things and fairs and food markets and things like that. That's what makes Georgia special. And so that's normal. So her pageant that she was a Miss Donaldsonville, it seems very normal to me.
Georgia criminal defense attorney Meg Strickler, who's based in Atlanta's Fulton County, says she hadn't even heard of Donaldsonville, a small city about 3 hours south of the capital city, bordering both Florida and Alabama. Not only was Poague crowned Miss Donaldsonville, she also competed in the Miss National Peanut Festival last year. This year, she was charged with felony murder, aggravated battery, and first-degree cruelty to children in the death of a little boy. Right now, we're still unclear about how she knew the boy or what their relationship is. What we do know is that there are some pretty serious charges against the defendant here, Trinity Poague. Does that mean there's some pretty solid evidence to back up this murder charge she's facing?
The way I look at it, yes, there was enough to get to the arrest and hold her in jail with no bond. And no one's filed a motion to set bond yet. Now it's still early. And that's what we're going to do. If I was the lawyer at this point, I would go ahead and start digging a little bit and see how did we get here? And what would make me think she's bondable, and we'll find out, is if the evidence is a little scant. And we don't know yet. We don't know what statements she made. I think the key part here is what text messages she texted family and friends. And then when law enforcement came to her, what did she say? And then, of course, you've got video surveillance. What happened, where, and when? And does that get corroborated with what she says in her statements? So if there's other things that she did that didn't make sense, that's going to make her stay in there. And as you already have seen, the GBI is investigating this. And to get to the point of arresting somebody, they do have some evidence. I just don't know what it is yet.
It was just last week, on January 14th, when the Georgia Bureau of Investigation began looking into the crime after the 18-month-old boy was taken to the emergency room. He's since been identified as Jackson Drew, whose legal name is Romeo Angeles. According to a press release, hospital staff tried to perform life-saving measures on the boy, but he still died. So far, we don't know his cause of death or many details surrounding it. It happened in Americus, Georgia, where Poague was a freshman at Georgia Southwestern State University. The school's police department and the Americus PD assisted with GBI's days-long investigation that ended with Poague's arrest. Strickler says it's a specific charge that stands out and gives us clues into what happened. What we do know, though, is that Poague has been charged with a couple of things: felony murder, aggravated battery, and first-degree cruelty to children. Again, we don't know the specifics as of right now, but what could be some of the things that would lead to those charges?
Oh, it's important to explain. Cruelty to children first degree is a felony, and that one just means some sort of pain and suffering has happened to the child. What I think is a giveaway here is that aggravated battery. That's a harsh charge. Of course, we have the felony murder. I'm not disputing that. But what I read into it, and believe me, I'm just reading into it, is this baby could have been shaken. So there's your aggravated battery. Could have been smothered. There's your aggravated battery. Aggravated battery requires damage, like in an adult would be like a shoulder being dislocated, a broken nose, something substantial that then makes it become aggravated battery. So when I hear that charge happening here, I'm only guessing and assuming that something happened to this baby, obviously, that caused her to be killed. I'm not fighting you on that, but what was that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what was that? What damages were happening here? And I just assume and read into that charge that means something like this: a shaken baby, and I know he's 18 months, but you can still shake. Something happened here.
Based on that aggravated battery charge paired with the murder and child abuse charges, Strickler says the boy's death wasn't an accident, or at least that's what GBI believes.
That's how I read it. And we lawyers are trained not to assume, but I'm reading into that to mean there was some aggression here, some sort of, where was this 18-month-old not behaving in a way that she wanted this baby to be quiet, something like this. And that's what I'm reading into it. But again, and the fact that it was at the dorm, I mean, I don't know what's going on here. And then whose child was this? That's in question still. It's a lot to learn.
We don't know the relationship that she had with this baby. Is that something that will play a factor into any of this?
That's a good question. So, because if it was your child, it almost makes it more egregious in a strange way. It shouldn't, but it almost makes it. But if she was babysitting, that's highly problematic. But I might have read somewhere that it was the boyfriend's child from another relationship, and that reads a lot. You could really read into intent. Was there some intent here where she just wants to get rid of this child? I mean, I don't know, but when I do think the relationship between her and the 18-month-old is pivotal.
After several days of investigation, Poague was charged on January 19th.
What normally happens in an investigation is when it's murder, rape, kidnapping, these horribly bad charges that you won't get bond at the magistrate level, you're going to have the investigators take some serious time to make sure that there's some merit to these charges before issuing arrest warrants. And this happened rather in quick succession. So you got to wonder, is there some inculpating evidence here that's real obvious? And we don't know yet. But I have a suspicion there was something there that made it really, I don't say obvious, the wrong word, but made it clear that they have enough to issue an arrest warrant fast. And I don't know what that is yet, because normally they'll wait. They would want to wait to get some more medical records. They want to wait and get some reports made. This happened very quick. From what I read, it was January 14th to like January 19th, something like this. Very quick incident to arrest. There's something here that made them run and arrest her and get her off the streets.
After her arrest, Poague was booked in the Sumter County Jail and is being held without bond. Strickler says that's customary in Georgia for serious charges such as murder.
There's what we call the 7 deadlies, and there's certain charges: rape, murder, arson. These things, kidnapping, hijacking, are all charges that by law, by statute, you can't get bonded out with that first appearance hearing in front of what we call a magistrate judge here. And so those are immediately bound over to Superior Court, which is the big court, trial court here in Georgia. And what that means is now someone has to file a motion to set bond and get a hearing in front of said judge. And normally that's going to take a few weeks at the minimum to get organized, because there's some other statutory things that have to happen before we have that hearing. And there's where we go and negotiate with the prosecutor and bring in strength of the case, her background, what we call here in Georgia Ayala factors. Who is she, and is she bondable? That's the summary of the factors. It's not all of them.
It will be up to a Georgia Superior Court judge whether Poague should receive bond. Strickler says her history with the pageant world could actually play a factor in her release. Do you think some of her background would go into that? I mean, just in the brief research I've done about her, she's 18 years old. She was a beauty pageant contestant or winner. I saw that she had received a scholarship. Are these all things that a judge would consider?
Absolutely. What the factors really are ties to the community, risks to reoffend. Who is she? Does she have a job? Is she somebody who has prior convictions? She has none of those things. She was a person on the right trajectory, which is, a job, part-time job, I guess she has. She was in college. She's a freshman at Georgia Southwestern College. She was doing the right things, and then whatever this was occurred. So there are possibilities for a judge to say, you know what, she's somebody we could give bond to. But the bond would be at the very minimum $20,000, and there would be conditions, and I'm not sure what those conditions are, but this is an extreme case. I mean, 18-month-old baby killed. I don't know if a judge would give bond. It really has to get to some nuances here as to the strength of the case, most importantly. And is there anything else involved here? Did she have any kind of prior history of any sort? Were there prior police reports of activities, of things that she did? That will make it so she doesn't get bond.
The investigation into the boy's death is still ongoing, but Strickler believes there is some key evidence to back up the harsh charges. So, with such overwhelming evidence to bring these very serious charges in such a quick timeline from the child dying over to her arrest, how is that something that the defense is then going to combat?
Medical records, experts. This will be a battle of experts. Perhaps they didn't follow a procedure on the statements that were garnered. We could file a motion to suppress on those statements. If there's any technology here, they may have taken her phone. If they took her phone, and that wasn't necessarily given by consent. So there's some legal aspects here that we might be able to argue. And again, I'm not sure what those are yet, but I can say confidently there will be experts to read what occurred. Another autopsy will most definitely be ordered, even by the prosecution, to kind of, either if the prosecution will do it, to kind of amplify or redouble their conclusory results, and the defense will do it to fight whatever is said from the prosecution side. So battle of experts is a virtual guarantee here.
Another near guarantee that Poague receives additional charges.
Whenever you have a case where it starts off as this, it's always going to turn into this. And that's just the nature of the criminal justice system here in Georgia. It's very rare that the case would remain and charges would remain exactly as we know it today. And that's for a multitude of reasons. One reason, we don't know everything yet. We haven't done a full investigation. More importantly, the second reason is the people who are charging right now are the police officers, law enforcement, GBI. They're not lawyers. When the prosecutor's office gets the case, prosecutors will charge the case in an indictment or present it to the grand jury, and there are legal things that will happen. So in this circumstance, obviously murder of some sort, murder in first degree might be added. There could be more cruelty to children if there's ultimately other acts. Well, so I'm making this story up, but let's pretend 2 days prior she's in Kroger and you see her yanking this 18-month-old. That would be another instance. That'd be another charge. So there's almost, guaranteed there'll be additional charges here. Reckless conduct could be another one. Aggravated assault could be another one.
And it does sound like we're very early on. I mean, you're saying more charges will be added here. The investigation isn't even complete. But where do we expect things to go from here, at least in the initial near future?
I think two things. One is a motion to set bond could or should be filed, but then also a preliminary hearing will be scheduled. Actually, already is scheduled. I don't know when it is, but I'm sure it's been scheduled, because once you hit the jail and you don't get bond, a preliminary hearing gets scheduled. And so lawyers sometimes like to have that preliminary hearing. I do this because I like to do it, because I like to kind of hear what the evidence is. And so I make it like a discovery motion for me in my head to get discovery. That's not what a preliminary hearing is, but that's what I do. And what it should do is see if there's enough information and data out there for them to charge. So a preliminary hearing in Georgia is to see if there's enough information, enough data, enough of the evidence to show that there's enough sufficient for the case to be bound over to Superior Court. That's the purpose of it. Now, in real life, if she bonds out, the preliminary hearing almost always gets waived. Just put away, bye-bye. And that's just logistically how we do it here. So we sometimes will negotiate, hey, we can give you, if the prosecutor will say, look, if you waive the prelim, we'll give you bond. You better believe I'm going to waive the prelim to get my client out.
The murder is still under investigation by the GBI, but will be handed over to the Southwestern Judicial Circuit District Attorney's Office once complete. Anyone with more information is asked to contact GBI. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.